Hi, I'm Chris Colvin. I'm the founder of IvyLife. One of the things that we've been doing in recent times is doing IvyLife Masterclasses, where we invite longtime IvyLife members to share the expertise that they've developed in their chosen field. So in tonight's masterclass, I'm really excited to have Antoine of Antoine Education here. A little personal note, I am the father of twins who are seniors in high school. So almost exactly a year ago, I called Ed, probably sounding a little bit nervous and wondering, well, when should my kids start? Should they take the SAT or the ACT? When should they start prepping, et cetera, et cetera? Ed immediately put me at ease, and he really helped my kids feel prepared, be prepared, and made the process not only a successful one, but one that made them comfortable. So I really, having had that experience, I thought it'd be great to share with my successors in stress, those who have juniors and younger high schoolers who are about to go through the process that I went through ×2 last year. So here I'm going to jump right into it. And I formulated some questions. These are basically the questions I asked Ed a year ago when I was trying to figure out how to help my kids prepare. So first of all, there's all this stuff about test optional. So just the basic threshold question is, should my kid take the SATs or not, or the ACTs?
Yeah, now that's a question that a lot of people are going to ask, and I think, and have asked themselves over the last couple of years. And I think, depending on your circumstance, you're going to answer it a different way. But I would say for pretty much everyone, plan A should be to take the SAT or ACT and try to get a competitive score, because a competitive score will only help you. So, and I've worked with many people who've done this. The goal has been to get a score that they felt would get them an advantage for admissions. And, and then it's at some point you have to make a judgment call about, whether or not you should send the score. But I definitely think it is, in your interest for your child to try to get a competitive score that can give an advantage in admissions. Test optional remains an option, but it's like any other element. Well, I say it's like other elements of your application where you're trying to distinguish yourself, but it is a singularly focused element where you really do have an opportunity to distinguish yourself from a lot of other applicants that on paper might look very similar. But if you can just give that little, move the needle a little bit just because you have a better SAT score, it's definitely worth effort to do that.
So how about which one? So once it's clear that these kids should be, kids that want to get into top schools should at least take a test, and they should prepare for it. But which one? Should they take the SAT or the ACT, and how do they decide?
Yeah, now this is, at this point, it's pretty much every college is going to take either. They're open to taking either score. And you can distinguish. The only way to really make a informed decision about that is to do a practice test of each, a full-length practice SAT, a full-length practice ACT. Now, second best to that is your PSAT score. And there are an increasing number of schools that offer what's called the pre-ACT.
Okay.
I see them a little bit on the East Coast, but they're out there. But what you have to do is you take the score and you look at what percentile that score is in, what percentile ranking it would be in, and you compare the percentile rankings. And then you say, well, would my child end up in a higher ranking on the SAT or the ACT? Now, for most students, it's going to be very close. It's going to be within a percentage point or two, because the tests they're similar. They're certainly not identical, but they're similar. And, your skills, your demonstrated skills on the test are going to fall in roughly the same range versus your peers on both tests. But I really encourage people always to think, the test is a means to an end. You always want to keep the end in mind. The end is not necessarily getting any particular score. It's having a score that's going to support your application and make you competitive against the other applicants.
Well, the other day at one of my kids' soccer games, a parent with a sophomore asked me, well, should my kid take both the SAT and the ACT? What's your view? I mean, I guess,
That's a big fat no.
okay, I thought so. That's
Yeah,
what I told her. I'm like, I don't know. I don't think that's a good idea. And I think if I
no,
tried to do that, my kids would have rebelled, I think. So
that's a lot of time and effort.
now, that leads me to when should people's kids be taking the test? I think there's a sitting in December usually, then there's some in the spring, the summer. When should a kid take the test?
My feeling is that kids should be thinking about taking the test in the spring of their junior year.
Okay,
And when I say spring, I should say second semester of, because the first time they're going to take it most likely will be, what's officially still winter, like a February, March,
okay,
February for the ACT, March for the SAT. So you're going to take, so for most, you're going to want to think about starting your prep, at least 2-3 months before the test date.
okay.
I was going to say, it's becoming every year people prep earlier. So
Yeah.
I would say 3 years ago, I would have said it was unusual, but every year I talk to people earlier, I start working with students earlier. So there is a growing cohort who are basically coming out of junior year saying, okay, I want to get started and I
Okay.
want to get done. And honestly, I don't, for students who are pretty advanced, who, are willing to start in August or September, and be done by December, that's a good plan too. That can be a good plan, but
Yeah.
typically it's only for a student who's looking for a really high score and can get onto a track that within the 2-3 months before the December test, they're likely to get.
Yeah.
But have a goal. And typically, if you're willing to do, like I said, that essentially 3 to 6 months of prep, most students are able to get to their goal in that time frame. And if you don't, then clearly there's now an August test. There's the fall for seniors. So I guess there's, until you hit your goal, there's no keep taking it. I mean, I must admit, I'm a little bit like, if you set a goal and it's a rational goal and it's going to help your admissions, if you don't get it in the first 2 times, even though I hope and expect you will, go ahead and take it again.
The impression that I've been getting throughout this college application process, including the test prep, is that it seems a lot harder to get into Ivies and other elite schools today than it did, 30 whatever years ago when I was applying. I get the sense like I would never get into an Ivy today, but so is that what about that? Is that true, or is that a myth? What's happening with, are these schools truly getting much harder to get into?
Well, they are getting harder to get into. There's no question they're getting harder to get into, but I think a lot of that is population pressure. The size of the classes have not expanded as the population of the applicant pool has expanded, or as rapidly as the applicant pool has been. So there are more students applying, to the same, group of schools, selective schools. And so, yes, it's on a percentage basis, yes, there fewer percentage are getting admitted. And I think it's also very true that, kids are taking more AP classes than ever. The whole game, the focus on getting into these schools has just kind of heated up over the past, 5, 10, 20, 30 years.
So anyway, thanks again, Ed. Anyone that has any questions, feel free to email me. It's just Chris, CHRIS @ivylife.org.